Okay, so as said, my name is Stephen Allwright. I am a data scientist working at Elkjøp Nordic. My job at Elkjøp Nordic primarily revolves around improving the personalization and the customer experience that customers have at Elkjøp. And I'm going to be talking to you today about how I went from working in a kindergarten to working in data science. So this is, do you see the, yeah, cool. This is me in 2017. This is me and my 9 kids in my kindergarten class that I looked after with myself and 2 other teachers. It was a lot of fun and it was working in the smallest age group, so from kids between the age of 10 months and 2 years. And the reason why I started working in that is because I moved to Norway from the UK in 2017 and I needed to find a job. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I didn't have a career goal or anything like this in mind. I kind of moved to Norway for the adventure with my wife. So I heard from a friend that working in the kindergarten was a lot of fun and they needed a lot more male employees. So I thought, okay, great, cool, sounds fun. So I applied to basically every kindergarten in Oslo and heard back from 1. And then I ended up getting a job there, which is a kindergarten just north of Storo called Brottenalian Barnage. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. It really helped me, especially settle into the culture of Norway, understand more about how things work and get settled just generally. And yeah, I'd like to think that I learned some quite useful skills as well, like just handling stress, because when you've got 9 babies crying at the same time and you have to calm them all down, it can be quite stressful. And handling people as well, because there's a lot of interaction with parents and with other employees who may be nervous or stressed about having maybe their first child in the class, for example. So definitely a lot of things that I could use and still use later on. But yeah, it was just an immense amount of fun. And I worked there in total for 1 year. There's definitely one thing though that I don't really use in my data science job, and that is the ability to change 9 nappies in the space of a very short space of time. That doesn't really come in handy anymore at Elkjøp, but everything else I feel like helped me a little bit. So whilst it was fun, I knew it wasn't something that I wanted to do long term, but I didn't really know what that was until I had a conversation with my brother-in-law who recently got into data science. And he told me about what he does on a day-to-day basis. And I thought, that is it. That's what I want to do. You know, it's a great combination of people solving problems, helping people in the day-to-day life, make things more personalized, etc. And also the kind of technical coding data side as well. And so that really excited me. And I thought, great, that's it. That's what I'm going to do in my life. The only problem was that I didn't really have a CV to go along with it. You know, I was working in the kindergarten at the time. It wasn't necessarily like the most obvious next stage for my career. So what did I do? So before I worked in data science, this is what my CV looked like. I did a degree in mathematics, which is obviously relevant. But then I worked in like a small finance company, not kind of just working with customers. So it wasn't necessarily like a data related job at all. And then I moved to Norway and then I was working in a kindergarten. And so if you could think of like Julia showed, the kind of classic CV when you go for a data science job, you know, it may look like I went to NTNU and I studied computer science and then I got a job at a consultancy firm. That's not what my CV looked like. So I knew that I was going to have to add some extra skills or some extra qualifications to this CV to help me get that job, because as it stood now, it wasn't going to work basically. So I gave myself 2 years. This was back in mid 2017. So I said, right, mid 2019, I want to be working in data science. So I set out on the task of getting that job and learning those skills. So how did I actually make the jump eventually? So I found the first step was I found a really good bootcamp course on Udemy that taught me the skills all the way from kind of data reading and manipulating the data all the way up to making models and machine learning models. And after that, then I was able to focus more on specific courses for specific skills. Like maybe I took a SQL course or I took a machine learning course specifically to learn specific skills. And I really just immersed myself in the whole, the culture and all the skills that I needed to learn in the whole environment as well. And whilst I was doing this, I was also creating portfolio projects as well, because I thought, okay, well, I have no experience on my CV of doing anything related to, data science or machine learning or computer science or coding. So I have to show them, that I can do this. So I created a portfolio on GitHub. I attended meetups, tried to network as much as I could with other people. And I kind of just threw myself fully into this. So I would get up really early, 2 hours before work. I would study for an hour or two. I would come home from work and then I would study again in the evening. And I did this for about 6 months. I don't think my wife was super happy about it, I'm going to be honest, but it all worked out in the end. And then after 6 months, I was speaking with a recruiter on LinkedIn because I was asking people for advice. And he mentioned that there was a position opening up at Sopra Steria for a data science consultant. And he thought that my CV was relevant. And so I thought, okay, sure, whatever. I didn't really believe him, to be honest. So I was just like, yeah, that's fine. You can send it if you want. And then I was quite surprised to hear that I actually got an interview. And then even more surprised that I got through that interview, and then even more surprised when I got offered the job. And of course, I took that job, and that's where my data science journey started. So I was immensely thankful for that team of people for taking me on, because it was a risk. My CV did not necessarily look like the classic people or the other people who were in the department necessarily. So that's the kind of general gist of my journey, from kindergarten to data science. But how can you make the transition yourself? What can we learn from my journey and apply it to generally in terms of getting from a position where you don't have a traditional background into data science? So I have a few key points that I just wanted to bring out. The first one is the importance of a portfolio. Now, if you're like me, you need to distinguish yourself. There's nothing, in my CV necessarily, in my experience, that says, this guy's a data scientist, let's hire him. It's like a no-brainer. So I had to create a portfolio. So I hosted it on GitHub of just all of the skills that I could ever think of that I could do. And I just put everything in there to really just highlight everything that I could do. Now, this is not just a technical coding topic, the importance of a portfolio. I believe it's actually super important across all types of roles. It could be related to a project management role, could be relation to a kind of more of a customer facing role. I think that showing, when you don't have that experience to show on your CV, having a portfolio of projects with real world situations and examples and what you would have done in those exact situations, I think is really, really important. And it's a great way of getting around that experience issue. The next thing I wanted to bring up was using available online courses. Now, nowadays, the data science has been around for quite a while. You can spend an immense amount of money on courses and qualifications and certifications. You can spend thousands of dollars on MicroMasters courses from the kind of big American schools. Now, whilst that is probably, or could be helpful for certain people, I believe that for the vast majority of people, using courses that are available on places like Udemy and Coursera, and maybe edX as well, and other platforms that are low cost, is the perfect way to go, because it's a low barrier to entry, and they're really easy to add to your CV or add to your LinkedIn profile afterwards, so that you can easily show people what you know and what courses you've taken. So you don't have to spend the earth to get those skills that you need. And you can start generally, like I did. I started with a general bootcamp course that went through everything, and then you can focus on particular skills afterwards. Because the danger with a long course is that you are just on that track, whereas doing kind of bits and bytes of different courses that you think are relevant really helps you to pick up the skills quickly that you think you would need for a particular role. The next thing I wanted to highlight was just mastering the basics of data science. And so that looks like, if the slide comes up, there we go. That looks like learning about how do we communicate data? How do we visualize data? How are we bringing insight out of the data? Because whatever role you have in data science, whether that be a machine learning engineer, or a project manager or a data scientist or an analyst, we're all working with data, whether that be large data sets or small. And all of our role is essentially bringing value and bringing insight out of that data. And so mastering these basic skills of being able to work with data at whatever level is really, really key. And if in my specific example where I was going for a data science role, then for me, it was about understanding, okay, distributions. What do the different distributions mean? What are the basics of statistics? Can you do feature engineering? Are you able to handle outliers in an effective way? These are all the kind of key skills that are needed. And this is what 80% of the role comprises of. And so I think it's really key to focus on these basics before we focus an immense amount of time on creating very cool and very fancy machine learning models. Because also if we're thinking about the actual just process of the job hunt itself, in technical interviews, the vast majority of technical interviews are based around these skills. I don't think I've ever been in a technical interview where they've asked me to code out a machine learning model. It's always been, do you understand what this distribution of data is saying? Do you understand how to create a function to mess around with these columns? That's what it focuses around. So, and these skills often have a very nasty way of showing up in interviews if you don't master them. It's very easily kind of shows up under pressure. The next one, the penultimate one to bring out is the nice to haves. So when you're often going for a role, there'll be a key set of skills that you need. It could be you need to know Python and SQL, or you need to be able to communicate with people who are not in data science. I don't know, whatever the key tasks are that you're going to have to undertake. But there's also going to be additional things, nice to haves that, oh, it would also be really great if you also knew how to use Google Cloud Platform, or, oh, it'd be really cool if you also knew how to spit code in Java. And if you're like myself and you need to distinguish yourself amongst a swathe of other people who have standard computer science backgrounds, then if you, by learning these nice to haves, can be a really great way of actually pushing yourself above other people. So I would keep an eye out for that, especially if you're seeing a recurring pattern as well in the roles that you're going for. And then my last point that I want to bring up is networking. Now, I know this may be a kind of eye roll moment because people talk about this so often, but really can't be overstated that data science is a very small world, and especially in a place like Oslo, for all of you people who are from Oslo here, but generally data science is a very small world. And so getting your name out there can make a massive difference in your hunt for a job. People and employees or employers like to hire people that they know, and they like to hire people based off of recommendations because it feels safer and they understand what they're getting into. And so if we kind of know this, and we all know this is the case in a lot of situations, let's make it easy for them by getting out there into the community, being an active member of a group like Oslo.ai and other data science groups, and get yourself known and meet other people, because maybe in 2 years' time, there'll be the person who's interviewing you or the person on the team will be someone that you met at a meetup, and that will make things a lot easier for you. And this, remember, also is a long-term investment. You're not going to turn up to Oslo.ai and someone's going to just go, oh, do you want a job? It's a long-term investment, and it's also just investing in people and friendships as well. So to summarize the key takeaways from this talk, and to summarize how I transitioned from kindergarten to data science and how you can also do the same, is create a project portfolio. Show the employer and show the company that you can do what is required for the role. Utilize online courses. Don't feel like you need to spend an immense amount of money on expensive courses. Find really good, high quality, low cost courses on Udemy or Coursera. And I can share the links to the courses that I took as well afterwards if people are interested. Make sure you master the basics. So understand and master the art of looking at data, understanding what data is saying, and bringing out insight, and the technical basics of just manipulating data. Keep an eye out for those recurring nice to haves. Could be a way of really pushing yourself above the parapet there. And network with people in the industry, get involved in the Oslo.ai group and the other groups in and around or wherever you live, and invest in all of these skills in the long term. This is This is a long-term investment if you want to be getting this role in data science or AI. So those are my points, and I hope that you took at least something away from this talk. I want to thank you to Oslo AI for having me, and thank you for listening, everybody, and good luck in your transition into AI.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for sharing your journey. That was interesting and inspiring. So yeah, very good. And building a proper portfolio, I think many of us wish we'd started earlier or something like that. So that's no, really, really great. Thanks for sharing. Yes, and yeah, there's plenty of questions, I think, in the chat. So please have a look there.